authors, but actually do it.
Absolutely. And Cynthia, how about you? What excites you about our conversation today?
Anytime we get the chance to talk about sharing your stories, I am all in because there's so much value that comes with that. And the number of innovators that I have had the chance to connect with that say, I have this story that's brewing inside of me, but I don't know where to start. There's too many to count. I ran out of fingers.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they're tuning in for this session, because I know that the panelists that we have today have a lot of information to offer to help them start on that journey.
Absolutely. And speaking of panelists, I'm going to go ahead and duck out. This is your show. I'm just living in it. And I'm going to bring up our panelists. So take it away, Cynthia and Catina.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. All right, innovators. Well, we have some wonderful guests joining you for Girls Guide to Business. Write that book. Miss Jen Mann, Miss Mia Ramsey, and Miss Dia Wall, thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump in. I know we have some really esteemed panelists, and I want to make sure that they have the chance to get to know a little bit about you first. So we'll start with Jen, go to Mia, and then to Dia, only because that's the order that you're on my screen. But tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the book or books that you have written.
Well, hi. Thank you again to InnovateHER for hosting this and having me today and inviting me to be a part of this. My name is Jen Mann, and I am a local author here in Kansas City. And I have been writing for I always have to look at the calendar. I've been writing for 11 years now. And I have several books, but probably my most notable books are called People I Want to Punch in the Throat. I have a whole series of books about people I want to punch in the throat. And then my latest book is called Midlife Bites, Anyone Else Falling Apart, or Is It Just Me? I am a self-published and traditionally published author. I have a foot in both worlds. I published with Penguin Random House, so I have experience with Big Five, but then I've also self-published myself. And then I also publish anthologies every year, except for this year. I don't have it planned yet, so maybe I'll get it done before I still have half a year left.
There's still time. There's still time.
Usually I publish an anthology every year as well, and those I self-publish, and I invite other authors to join me. I come up with a topic for us, and I think I have, I don't know, I've lost count. I think 8 of those now at this point. And it's called the I Just Want to Pee Alone series of books. So
I love the titles.
Absolutely. Those are awesome. I'm like, people are going to run to the bookstore to get that one. People I want to punch in the throat.
Yes.
Because all of us, well, I'm not going to say all of us, because Cindy is pretty nice. But Mia and I, for sure, I know it's people we want to punch in the throat. And we don't get to do that or say that. So thank you.
In other places. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like everybody has a list, and if I just write them down instead of actually doing it, it's much better for society. So
absolutely. Yes. Dia, I believe you're up next.
I think it's Mia.
Mia? All right.
Oh. Mia, Dia, I love it. Just any Ia can go.
Take it away, Mia.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all so much. Catina and I have been friends for a long time, and I just recently found out that Cynthia and I are related. I mean, like really related. Yeah, because I would see her all the time, and I just realized that that's my cousin's daughter, because we live on opposite sides of the city. But so grateful for this opportunity to be able to share my new release, Out of the Hard Place, 50 Things I've Learned in 50 Years. And this is definitely my first book. It won't be my last. I'm currently considering writing another book called For What, the number 4. And it's about being mortified that I found out that I had topped the scale at 400 pounds. So it's the journey to getting the weight off mentally, physically, and emotionally. So working on that in my head. But this book, self-published, it has been very interesting. the journey. I haven't published anything. I hadn't published anything before except for music. I am first of all a musician. I'm a preacher. I'm an elder at my church, Kingdom Word Ministries, and I'm the minister of music there, and I've been on the piano since I can remember, and so had a soul band. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary. So I always wrote music, but I never put creative writing together with what was in my head, and so I wrote my book. Out of the hard place, 50 things you can get in 50 years. I wrote that actually like a magazine. And so when you read it, there are ads in there, and the ads are actually references to lessons. And so I'm really excited for people to have the opportunity to see it. So I can't wait to hear what you guys bring to the table. Jen, I am so getting that book today. I have so many places I want to punch people. So yeah. But thank you also, for having me, and I can't wait to hear more.
Hi, I'm Dia. I am a journalist. I work at KSHB 41. I would say by day, but technically I work at night. Wife, mom of two little kids. My daughter's 4, my son's 2. So my house is very busy. My life is very busy. But I self-published. I call it a sort of memoir because it's 15 people, places, and experiences that have taught me meaningful lessons about happiness. There were a couple of reasons I self-published. A couple of publishers had reached out. I'd kind of shopped my idea and what I wanted to do around, but I just was not motivated to step up and just get it done. The catalyst was really my 35th birthday is in 6 months. And so I just put my head down and I did it, I specialize in telling other people's stories, not necessarily my own, but I do feel like there are some universal experiences. And as a millennial, quite frankly, I got tired of folks ahead of us talking trash. So I think that it's very important for us to own the place that we're in, right? We're not our parents. We're not our grandparents. We're a totally different generation. But I do think there are some things that we can learn and glean from each other that are applicable moving forward. And so that was really the biggest reason why I said, okay, let me go ahead and do it. It was terrifying. It was scary. It was all those things. But I'm really glad I did it. And I feel like it was a valuable and worthwhile thing for me personally. And so super excited to dive in today.
That's awesome. I loved all those introductions. There was meat that could actually set us up for additional conversations beyond this one. So very excited. I do want to thank all of you that are tuning in and listening live via our social media platforms. I invite you to share the broadcast out and invite others to join us. I'm going to give it to Cynthia to actually ask you all the first question that we have for you. And I also want to encourage those that are looking and watching in to ask their own questions as well. So we want to make sure that we're engaging with the audience also.
Absolutely. I am super excited. Just hearing about each of the books that you've written. I have an inkling into what that journey might have looked like to start you on that writing path, but that's where we're going to start. And we can go in any order. So whomever is inspired to answer first, please jump in. But tell us about your path to writing. What was the catalyst that sparked that journey for you?
All right, I'll jump in. I've always loved writing. Literature was my first love. I kid you not. My treat on weekends as a kid was to go to the library with my mom because I'd be like, "You can take 10 books home." Yeah, you can take 10 books home, right? So I grew up loving to read. I was always a bookish kid. And so very early, I'm talking about like elementary school, I started creative writing. And I would write these short stories that to this day are still hilarious. In fact, my godmom in the last couple of years gave me one of the first short stories I ever wrote. And it was about stubbing my toe when we were trying to put together my new bed, right? So like I always loved creative writing. I've always loved storytelling. That's probably how I became a journalist. And so writing for me was somewhat easy, but I think having the time space dedicated to figure out what it is you want to say, why you think it's valuable, and when you think it's the right time to release it into the wild. That was the hard part for me. So I feel like I've always been a writer. That'd be my answer.
I'll hop in.
Awesome.
I think like Dia, I think when I was growing up, I would those that know me, Katina knows me. I'm very frank, and I was probably about 8 or 9, and I would sit on the toilet and look at the toilet tissue roll, and that would be my camera because I was going to be a journalist. And so, I would read, and and then I would look up and I would read, and so I actually went to school to become a journalist. I left Bishop Hogan High School, best school in the city. I left Bishop Hogan High School and went to Prairie View A&M to study journalism. Ended up being more of a communications, public relations journey for me. But I'm like Dia when she did her intro, when I was on the road to turn 50, and I wanted to look back and say, what do I have that I leave as a legacy? What is the footprint, the thumbprint that my children, my children's children can say, Mama did that. My husband gave me the space and opportunity. We've been married 25 years. Our girls are 20, soon to be 23 and 16. And so they gave me room and they gave me space, and they also gave me feedback. And so, a lot of times when we're writing, we write in our most authentic spaces when we are dealing with either trauma or triumphs. And so for me, it was definitely that. I lost my mom when I was 15 in a tragic car accident on her way to church, and it was a Thursday. And so I had to dig deep to find that Mia, the 15-year-old Mia. And it was difficult. It was difficult. And so writing the story, there were some key points in my life that I wanted to remember, the age that I got raped, the age, that I had my first boyfriend, which wasn't until my husband came along. He was my very first boyfriend. I had lots of boys in friends, but just, and so these significant mile markers became what kind of led me in the step, in the steps toward writing. And so when I decided to call the book Out of the Hard Place, the picture on the cover is a beautiful flower coming out of the concrete. And I actually saw it at McDonald's. It was coming out of the wall. And so I was waiting in line. As you know, we all have to wait so long. And so I was looking at it, and I decided to have this conversation. And the conversation was, Mia, are you the flower breaking through the concrete, or was the concrete built around the flower? And so it made me think about those things that I either had to break through or got built around me, from generations before. So I think that was the catalyst that really helped me to begin to write, because I was turning 50 and I wanted to have a 50-year mile marker that, I could hand to my children and say, hey, this is what your mom is and was and will be. So
that's beautiful.
All right. Dang, that's kind of hard to follow, isn't it? Jeez. Especially since I write humor books. So
we need it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a perfect follow through. That's a perfect
oh God. I'm listening to him like, all right, Jen, tell your story about why you tell vagina jokes all the time. Okay. So mine is more of like, I'm a little bit like Dia in that I always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. I'm also that kid that got very excited at the library and was so excited I got to take those books home. And then I was even more excited when I found out that there were like actual people that wrote those books, and then like that was a job that I could do. But it took me another 30 years to get to that point. I do have a degree in creative writing, but I had an advisor in college who told me when I was a senior and I told him I was going to be a professional writer, he told me no one would buy a want ad that I wrote. And so that sort of like crushed me. And so I went into the corporate world, and I did a lot of technical writing and speech writing, but it was never writing for myself. And a few years ago, I was a realtor. We'd moved back to Kansas City. I'm from here. I went to high school here, and then we'd moved away. My husband is from New York City, and we'd lived there. And so we moved back here to have kids. And so I had 2 little kids. I was a realtor. And I just was like feeling really lost. Like I was a stay-at-home mom, but not, because I worked, but I worked from home. So I didn't fit in anywhere. And I didn't feel like I was like a very good mom or a very good wife or a very good realtor. And I was sort of losing my mind. And we're self-employed, so we have terrible insurance. So we could not afford for me to go to therapy. And so my husband was like, you know what you should do? You should write. And this was 2011. And he's like, I just read it. Like there's a thing called a mom blog and everybody has one. You should go get one because writing is a form of therapy and we can't afford any other kind of therapy for you. So you should write. And so I went out and I looked at the mom blogs that were out there. And 2011 was sort of like the rise of the mommy blogs. I mean, mommy blogs were everywhere. He was right. Everybody did have one, but they were like the most perky, just, I love nothing more than baking with my 2-year-old. And, Wednesdays are dust days and I love dust days. And I just was like, it just makes me feel worse about myself. And so he was like, no, don't you see? He's like, you would write like the antithesis. He's like, you're like the anti-mom blog. And he's like, you would tell the truth. You'd be like, I love my kids. I love my family, but I want to run away some days and I can't do this. And I'd go out and I'd buy new underwear instead of doing laundry. And I was like, and what will I call it? Like everybody had such cute blog names. They were just like, and so he's like, no, you'll call it People I Want to Punch in the Throat because you say it all the time. And so I went out and sure enough, peopleiwantopunchinthroat.com was available. So I bought it and I just started writing and I would stay up in the daytime and I would I do my real job. I'd sell real estate and I take care of my kids and I put my kids to bed at night and I'd hang out with my husband for like an hour. And then 10 o'clock or so, I'd come down. I have an office in my basement. I'd come down to my office and I would just start working on the next day's blog post. And I would put it out. And that was April of 2011. And then that December, I wrote a blog post about the elf on the shelf. And so I wrote a blog post about that guy and that blog post went viral and it was read by 1 million people in 24 hours. And in those days I had 70 readers. Most of them were related to me or had gone to college with me. I had no clue, I wanted to be a writer, but I had no idea how to do it. And my husband, thank God, because I'm sitting in a corner breathing into a paper bag because, like they tell you that you put anything on the internet and people can see it, but like you don't really believe it till it happens. And so I'm in a corner because that was my first time ever dealing with someone who didn't like what I had to say. 99% of the people appreciated it. They're like, thanks for making me laugh. This is such a hard time of year. Thanks for making me feel less alone. Thank you for, making me, feel like I'm an okay mom. At least I'm better than you, kind of thing. But there was like 1% of people that they wanted to steal my kids and raise them in a candy cane forest, surrounded by elves. And those were the people I fixated on, which is a terrible thing to do, but that's what I did. And so my husband, he sort of looked at me and he was like, what do you want to do tomorrow? And he had the smartest idea because I see this all the time when you have this opportunity that's like landed in your lap. And I see so many people who will come to me a week later and they'll say, okay, well, a week ago I went viral. What can I do now? And I'm like, no. The second that opportunity comes to you, like you have to jump in, whether you're ready or not. And I was not ready. I was not ready at all. But my husband was like, on our first date, you told me you wanted to be a writer. This is your chance. He's like, we have been waiting for the internet. Like, this is what it is. This is the great equalizer. And he's like, what are you going to write for tomorrow? And I said, and I think like all writers, I think we all have this moment. I was like, it'll never be as good. Like, I'll never do this again. This is lightning in a bottle. And my husband is a truther. He is someone who you never want, if you want to hear how bad the jeans look on you, then you ask him. Otherwise, you just go about your day because he will tell you. And he just looked me in the eye and he was like, oh, yeah, no. This was a fluke. Like, this was your one time. This was your one hit wonder. He's like, but here's the thing. I had created social media accounts because in those days, I didn't know anything about social media even. They didn't have a social media or anything. And in those days, all that was in existence was Facebook and Twitter, and Pinterest had just come into existence. And so that night, as I was going viral, I'd gone out and I'd got some spaces on the internet that my sister-in-law called me up and she was like, you're on the Twitter. And I'm like, where's the Twitter? How do I get there? And so I had created these social media accounts and Facebook was sort of my sweet spot. I got 17,000 people to follow me that night on Facebook. And he's like, you have 17,000 people that want to hear what you have to say. And he's like, focus on them. Like, look at them. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on them. And so I started writing. I started blogging 5 days a week. And I would blog 5 days a week after that. Before that, I'd been sort of just shooting from the hip, and I wasn't really treating it like a business. But at that point, I started treating it like a business. And within a year, we had self-published our first book, which was called Spending the Holidays with People I Want to Punch in the Throat. Building on that success with the Elf. And so, for the 1-year anniversary kind of thing, I had this book ready to put out. And that book was self-published, and it went to the top of the charts on Amazon, thanks to my readers, thanks to the power of social media. And, and at that point, that's when I could kind of leverage that and take it to Random House and say, hey, I know you guys think I'm just a crazy lady in the middle of the country screaming, but, I promise you, like, I can sell books, like, let's talk. And so I've been able to translate it into that. And I no longer really blog that regularly, but man, I should, because my newest book, Midlife Bites, it also came out of a blog post. So, it's like, I still have my blog out there. Social media is really where I focus now. Most of my efforts, I do sort of more like microblogging and, connecting that way. But the blog is still a great way just to try out things and to vent. And, not everything's a book. Not everything's meant to go in a book. And so that's why I still keep that too. So,
yeah. And everyone doesn't commit to or have the time to read the book, but by engaging and learning about you, and you actually telling our stories through your blog post, then we still can engage with you and become, fangirls or fan guys, right? We can follow you. We can be consumers of what you put out there.
It's a great marketing tool. I know we were going to talk about marketing in a bit, and but it is a great way to market and to get people to sort of like, it's a gateway. It's like, if you like this, you'll love the books.
And we do have a question in the States. You guys can see it as people who have shared very authentically of yourself in your writing. How have you been able to tap into that vulnerability while still maintaining boundaries and self-care? And I think that's an excellent question, because what I heard Dia say in her introduction is that I've always told other people's stories. Mm-hmm. But getting to a place where I can tell my own is something very different. And I think that's a commonality that all of you share in some shape, form, or fashion. When you start writing that blog and you were like, I am not going to be the mommy out here, and dare I say, lying, saying how great it is every single day, or creating that thing that women often do and say, we love this, when 50% of the time we like, can y'all take these kids back? And then Mia, like, it was about many of the traumatic experiences that she had, but like to know her, to meet her, you never would know that those things were a part of her story, but they were enough of her story that to put it out there for consumption was, all of those things have shaped and molded me into this powerhouse of a woman. But therein lies still that 15-year-old girl who lost her mommy. And I need to tell that story for my girls, my colleagues, my associates. So I think this is an excellent question. I'll stop talking and let you answer it. How do you tap into that vulnerability and still have boundaries in place and take care of yourself? Because it is a process to bring all of that stuff up.
Well, I'll just answer real quick. My daughter, my oldest daughter, is teaching me self-care. I didn't know self-care. Dia alluded to generations before her. And so, I know Catina and I'm not sure, everybody else's ages, but, we are from I think we're generation X or Y, child. I don't know. Z, the A to the B. I don't know. It's too many. Yeah. But we're the generation where my mother was a baby boomer. So we learned to watch our parents go to work tirelessly, and try to come home and be the tireless parent, and then go to church, if you're involved in some social aspect, be the tireless whatever in that social aspect. And so I never saw my mother take care of herself. I never saw my grandparents. We would go on trips and things like that, but that was the vacation. And so my oldest daughter has been teaching me self-care. I didn't realize how therapeutic the writing was for me because it helped me to be present. But I have to tell myself to be present. Even in these panels, like the panel discussion, and this is just the authenticity of it. We have so many things going on. And so you have to say, maintain eye contact, maintain being present, because I don't want to miss anything. Having 5 women, that are like, I'll use the word Catina said, that are powerhouses. You don't want to miss these gems. We get to see Dia on TV. And so the information that she's given us is, worldwide, local. But in these personal moments, we don't want to lose the opportunity to get a gem because our mind is so busy racing, and because we're not taught, at least my generation, we weren't taught how to care for yourself. There were very few families that I saw that the parents weren't always working. I didn't always see park time, where the kids were at the park with the families or whatever. And Cynthia can attest to it too. The Robinsons, my grandfather's side of the family, all of them work. All of them, they've always been hard workers since they were kids. And so the boundaries came when I had COVID. I had COVID early on when COVID hit March of 2020. I had COVID in August and I was hospitalized. The ambulance had to come pick me up from our house. And the only reason that the ambulance came is because I thought that it was allergies. And so, I was trying to treat the allergies or what have you. And my pastor, my husband, had contracted COVID. He had given it to me. And so, we were maintaining. He was getting better, but I was getting worse. And so, again, attributing to everything else. And so my pastor had called Bishop Morrison and was like, hey, I don't like how you sound. And if you're not better in 24 hours, you better pray every angel comes and rescues you, because I'm coming to pick you up and I'm taking you to the emergency room. And I was like, whatever. Okay, it's whatever. And literally, I had to call. I told my husband, I said, call 911. I said, but just talk to him. I'll need the ambulance. And let me expedite. Long story short, they told me, I told them my oxygen was at 85. They were like, you need to be in the hospital now. So I have been surviving on 85% oxygen for, I don't even know how many hours. And so I get to the hospital, and there was a moment in the hospital in August that I didn't know whether or not I was coming out. And so, I'm a woman of faith. And so I said, God, if I leave, it's going to be with the last breath that I have singing. And so I forced myself to sing in the hospital. I had oxygen. My oxygen was at 6 liters. And they were like, if we, increase it anymore, we're going to have to take you to the ICU. And I was like, yep, I'm healed. And so I was singing all of these songs about being healed, this, that, and the third. And when I started coming back, and I felt my health, increasing, God told me in that moment, he said, you've given too many people access to you, and your family gets the leftovers, and you want them to be satisfied with the 5%. And so it shook me, because we spend so much time, I'm trying not to tear up now. We spend so much time giving ourselves to other people. And the people that matter most don't get the full benefit of who we are, but they're the people that have to take care of you when you're depleted from taking care of everybody else. And so I did some soul searching, and it was so hard, because you have people that you love, that are close to you, that you are caretakers for, or just good friends to, or sisters, or what have you. But I had to start cutting off some things, because I was decaying, and nobody was picking up the pieces except my family. And so when I started writing this book, I told my daughter, I said, I wish that I was back in the hospital, not because I want COVID, but because the peace that I experienced, because I wasn't responsible for anybody. My family was taken care of. My husband was better. The village came and took care of them. But that was my first time, to get to the point, that was my first time I ever had self-care, was in the hospital battling COVID because nobody had my attention except for me. I had my own attention. So I read, I wrote, I sung, I exercised, I ate what I wanted to eat once I could eat. But it was therapeutic. And I think it's very important for every person that wants to be an author, every person that wants to be a writer, whatever you're doing, you have to make sure that you check in with you. And I didn't know that I was imploding until my body couldn't fight for me anymore. And then when I was depleted, it was like, now maybe you'll listen. And so since then, I've tried to be very intentional about things that I commit to. And, I'm still really busy, but my husband and my daughter just told me today, hey, you're getting back out there. And I was like, you know what? You show right. So I just, you got to maintain balance, but you got to have sometimes some people to say, hey, enough is enough. Have a seat, or your body will.
Thank you. That was amazing. I want to hear from Dia, because you made that statement, telling everyone else's stories, but never making the time maybe to tell my own story. And you wrote a memoir. So somewhat a pseudo memoir. So how did you get to a place where you were going to be courageous enough to share that vulnerability, but also practice self-care and set up the boundaries you needed to have in place to say, this is as far as I'm going?
So anybody who knows me knows I'm all in, right? I'm the type, let's fight at Thanksgiving, get the mess on the table, and we can hug it out after and have a drink, right? That's just
love it. Yes.
I do think generations past have a lot of unresolved trauma, right? Because we just don't process things out loud. My mother will tell you I've been the annoying kid asking too many questions since I was tiny. And so when you talk about the vulnerability piece, for me, you can only write about, process through, and articulate things that you personally have already healed from. So let me start there. You got to start from a place of healing. Even though you may be talking about traumatic events and experiences, your own healing has to come first, because then it can't hurt you anymore, right? So in my book, I talk about my father's struggle with addiction, and it's funny because I wrote the book without permission. This is my story, my voice. I have the right. But I went to therapy, y'all, for a minute. And I did that in secret almost, I remember being a little nervous because, my grandmother was kind of upset and was like, and I just, and my dad called me when he finally read it and was like, I'm proud of you. And if our story can help one person, then it was worth it. And to God be the glory, right? Because we've healed from the past. So start there. That's number one. Number two, I do think you have to be on solid footing and on solid ground. I felt a lot like Jen when I sat down to do this. I felt like I was rising my career, met this sort of cute guy, got married. I never thought I would be married. I was a professional man eater, you know what I'm saying? And so you look up and I was like, oh God, if I don't fly straight, this man is going to leave me. And I just remember, like Jen, man, I have a crazy support system and my husband. And if for all the ladies on here, this ain't leadership advice, this is life advice. Cute is one thing, but somebody who is going to come in and fill gaps in your life in ways that you did not. Like when I tell you, if there was one time I was close to the Lord, it was when my husband showed up on the scene. And I just say this to say, it's not just your romantic partners, friendships, business partners, any relationship you have in your life. Make sure you're very intentional about the people that you are selecting, because it goes beyond, we like the same TV shows. I don't like none of the shows my husband watch. I pretend. But I say all this to say, I was healed. And I think that you got to be at a place where you are stable and you're very clear. I think one commonality you hear between Jen, Mia, and myself, we were all very clear on what we wanted to articulate. My generation, I call us the happiness addicts. We think we're supposed to be happy all the time, living my best life all the time, on vacay all the time, sharing everything all the time. I buck all of that, right? And so I think for me, the book that I wrote is called The Unhappiest One, because I was deeply unhappy at a point in my life, strictly because, appreciate that, Lord, appreciate that. I was deeply unhappy. I had all the things, had the cute husband, had the great job, everything's going well. And I couldn't figure out, like, I should be on cloud 9. Like, I should be all the way up here. And I wasn't. And I think when I stopped and really reflected on my life and the experiences and the people that had really shaped me, that in and of itself was a form of therapy. Because I very quickly discovered I too am a person of faith. I'm a woman of faith. All the lessons that I needed to learn for that moment in my life, God had already given me, right? The people who showed up and stood in the gap for me, you know, when I had a health scare with my son. My church mom who told me that I was a raging lunatic when I first got married. Like, I mean, so all of these different things, I had the village. And so when you talk about self-care, I'm gonna shout out the earlier generation because it sounds like I'm an ageist. I'm really not. You know, I love my sisters who have come before me. My mom was like, you know, y'all think self-care is like a spa day and a vacation. She said, sometimes, Dia, self-care is putting them kids to bed early and taking a nice hot bath, right? My mom would get up early. And, you know, that could probably also be part of the reason I'm a writer. My mom would always get up. When I would wake up in the morning, I would see my mom with the lamp on, cup of tea, writing in her journal, right? And she shared some of the things that, you know, she journaled about and she processed through. My mom found a way to have self-care in the midst of everything else. And I think that's the cheat code. That's like millennial, that's our glow up, right? Is when we figure out how to do those things simultaneously. And I'm not saying check out on your family. I'm not saying the job is the most important thing. They know what my job. If my kids call, I'm out. Okay. You know, that's first priority. But at the same time, any place, any commitment, any organization, any relationship, friendship that I am committed to, you're going to get my full effort, my full self, my full presence. I'm going to be engaged and I'm going to lean in. And so I think that's the next level. So the whole point of me writing the book was to share those lessons that I had learned. People think it's all about external factors that bring you joy and fulfillment and happiness. Nah, it's you. And so make sure you're fully healed. Make sure you're coming from a place where you feel like you've learned some hard lessons. And I'm shocked at how much I agree with Jen because I'm the same one. Like I'm already like PTO. Oh Lord, I'm not prepared, you know? So I just say that to say, come from a place where you're healed, come from a place where you feel stable, come from a place where you feel like, okay, I do believe that I've crested this mountain. I've learned this lesson and I now want to bring some people along with me. So I definitely think that was part of it for me. And the self-care, man, for the millennials, you got to get it bite-sized, right? Sometimes just shutting off the laptop a little early, go get that glass of wine while it's on happy hour. You know what I'm saying? Because I can't do that now. But I mean, you know, it's small things. And so I think it's figuring out what you need to make your cup full.
Absolutely. I love that. Turning off notifications is self-care. Turning off notifications so that you don't have them. That's self-care right there. My gosh, Jen, I don't want to skip you. I know you've got some awesome stuff to add to this conversation as well.
Can we just start with me next time? Because geez Louise, like I'm listening to some like, I like to take baths. You know, like,
I'm sitting here like I'm taking notes. I got like 2 pages of notes. And then I just realized that of all of you sitting here, I am the unmarried one.
Oh, interesting.
And I love all of your husbands. I'm just gonna tell you up front. I know Hurston. Mia talks about her husband all the time. We've had encounters, but not a whole lot. I don't know you other 2 husbands, but just talking about them, I'm like, I love them. They are awesome.
Look, that need to be the next session because my friends need a little help out here. A little help.
Look, I'm writing it down. I need the help. But Jen, go ahead. I would love to hear more about how you access that vulnerability to, again, be bold and courageous enough to say, that ain't my story, but this is. And I'm going to do a little touch of humor and fun.
Well, I think with me, I kind of come from a different place in that, you know, comedy is kind of hard in that everything is not funny to everybody. And so you have to kind of think that way. And so I always say that I'm talking for people who can't talk, you know, that I don't have like a 9-to-5 job. Like I'm not going to get fired. Like I'm not going to walk in on Monday and have someone say, I didn't like what you said, you know, on social media yesterday, you're fired. And I know a lot of people have that. And so I'm always trying to think like, am I on the right side of this? Like, I take tough topics and I make them funny, you know, because I think humor diffuses tough topics. Plus, I also think that it just brings people in more. Like they'll be like, oh, this is hilarious. Don't mind her politics. Just read it. You know? And then I kind of swoop in with my politics. But I think that, and so for me, it's always the way I can try to be vulnerable is if it's to sort of stand in my power and know that, like, no, I'm on the right side. I'm on the right side of this. I have something to say about this. I need to say this. So I don't know if that's like a confidence thing, but it's like something about, I think as a writer, you have to be confident. It's such a weird job because we all have like imposter syndrome, which is bizarre because you're literally putting your thoughts out. Even fiction writers. I mean, I realize we've all written nonfiction, which is interesting too, but even fiction writers. I wrote a fiction book a few years ago and my husband read it and he was like, oh my God, this is more you than anything I've ever read in my whole life. So it's like, so even fiction writers are putting themselves and their thoughts and their opinions and their ideas into these books. And then you put it out there and you're just like, I hope you like it. And so that takes like so much confidence and so much belief in what you're doing. And so I think that I'm constantly sort of working on that I'm like, okay, no, I know that I'm right. I know that this is what needs to be said. As far as like vulnerability, it wasn't until I wrote Midlife Bites, my latest book, I really didn't have to be vulnerable. I'm really good at boundaries. Like I'm super good at boundaries. Like when my blog first went viral, my husband and I sat down and we had this conversation. And because people had like literally threatened to steal our small children, we decided that we would never reveal like their real names. So they have fake names on my blog. I call them, and in my books, I call them Gomer and Adolpha. And their real names are actually worse. Those were names I just picked out of a baby book that I thought sounded horrible and, better than what they had. And then I've never shown pictures of them. I've never revealed my husband's name or pictures of him. And, we don't talk about really for the first 2 years, I was anonymous. Like people accused me of being a man half the time. They were like, only a man would, have a mouth like this. That's the other thing. I'm listening to these two lovely ladies who are like literally preaching and we're going to church. And then I'm like using F-bombs like commas, but I try, like, I do go to church and I watch my mouth when I'm there, but it just kind of rolls out of me. But everyone's like, oh, you must be a man. You must be a man. No mom would write like this. And I'm sort of like, oh, I don't know. But it wasn't until I started writing Midlife Bites and I really started talking, I am Generation X. I turned 50 this year and I've been married now for 20 something, years. I've been with my husband, I think if you add up dating and everything, it's been like 25 or close to 30 years that we've, been together. Well, 25. And I'm not good at math. I'm a writer. And so, and it's like I think every relationship kind of, yeah, he's great. But then you look at him and you're like, is he always going to eat soup like that? And like, where's he been? And he kind of like, he got busy with his own career and he dropped out of like kind of supporting me. And so we had like a really rough patch for a while there. And really what brought us back, and I think it's interesting, I think COVID, listening to Mia talk about how, COVID sort of forced, to me, I think it was the best and the worst. Like it forced us all to come back together, whether we wanted to or not. And then we had to spend time, like he couldn't get away. I couldn't get away, and I'm trying to write this book in the middle of it. And I just remember every time I would send it off, my editor would come back and she's like, be more vulnerable. And I'm like, oh, I hate being vulnerable because I didn't want people to know that, I've always been kind of this person who I'm tough. And I couldn't be soft. I was like, no, I can't let them know that like I have a soft side. And she was like, trust me, they know, like they've got this. Like we have your number, Jen. Like we know, like you're just a big old crusty, croissant. You're really soft inside, I promise. And so I tried to be as vulnerable as I can. And it was hard. And I have to say, I mean, I wrote a lot about our relationship, and I think that you have to, though, because there's something else that has been in common with all three of us that we've been saying is that we write what we write because we're hoping to help other people. Like we're hoping that somebody else can benefit from what we've been through, what we've experienced, and what we're trying to share with you. And I thought, I'm not going to do anybody any good if I just act like it's all rainbows and sunshine, because it's not. And that was where I kind of had to have my whole like come to Jesus talk, where I was like, it's time for you to just you've told the truth about everything else. Why can't you tell the truth about this? Why is this so hard? Why is this one thing hard? So I did that. And it's been you know, it's been weird. It has been. I mean, it's like when the book first came out in the press, and I would we were still in a lot of lockdown. It was still a lot of virtual. And so my husband, you know, his desk is right there across from mine. And so, you know, he'd be sitting there, and, you know, the first question would be like, so, you know, your marriage, wow, you really went there. You know, I was like, yeah. And, you know, so he's like, we had to like live through it again. But I still, I always stand by that, like, you know, when he was like, dang, he's like, you really like told everybody our business. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, did I lie? Like, did I make anything up? And he was like, no. I was like, well then, and that's always been my thing. I'm always like, did I, you know, with the people in Punch and Throat books, someone will come to me and say, like, you know, I think I'm Mary. And I'm like, well, Mary's a jerk. Are you a jerk? Like, I don't, you know, did I lie about you? Like, what is your point? And so, but I think that as far as self-care and boundaries, I think boundaries, you just have to constantly be reinforcing them. And I liked what Dia had to say about, to me, it's quality versus quantity. Like, I keep my circle small and tight. I don't have a lot of free time. And what free time I do have, I spend with people who fill me, who, you know, like, you know, I love to get up in front of a group and in front of an audience and do all that and give. But then when it's time to like receive, I need a very small, you know, group that can like give back and help me fill back up again. And so my self-care, it's sort of like Dia's too, where it's just, I think about, one of the things I need that I missed desperately during lockdown was laughter. Like even today, like right now, like everybody's on mute and it sucks because I can see you laughing. I know I'm making you laugh, but I can't hear it. And it drives me crazy because I need to hear that laughter because it reinforces with me that like, okay, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. And that always kind of fills me back up. So if I can't, so as soon as I could get back out on the road, I went back out on the road so I could get up in front of groups and really hear them laugh and connect with people. I love connecting with my readers. Like that helps me a lot. Reading, I really got away from reading. Again, I think with the pandemic, again, I was consuming so much Netflix. I mean, how many times did we need to watch The Tiger King, you know, to feel complete? Like I watched The Tiger King so much but I couldn't read. I couldn't focus. Like I couldn't keep track of like a plot in a book. And so I've just again started picking up my books and reading again. And, you know, well, my Kindle, because I'm 50 and I can't see very well. So I have to have a big font. But, you know, it's like, I read a lot. I love the idea of trying, you know, and I also, like Mia, I had a health scare a few years ago. And I've developed this autoimmune disease and nobody really knew it's something that like 80-year-old women should have, right? And men too, I guess. But it was like, but then finally one doctor just casually said, he's like, well, you know, it could have also been brought on by stress. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, are you stressed? And I was like, do you live in this world? Because it's kind of a stressful place. Yes, I'm stressed like all the time. And so he was like, well, you have to stop. You have to stop. Okay. But I started things that at the time I thought were like yoga. Like, I don't want to do yoga. I'm just sitting there thinking of all the things I should be doing and please don't fart. Like that's all I'm thinking about. But yet when I started doing it and like my autoimmune disease, I got better. I was like, oh damn. All right. I got to keep doing yoga. Like, and so it's like so now I stretch and I have like these, I'm like an old woman now. Like I go to like silver sneakers or something, but I have like all these things that I have to do, because was it Mia who said it? Because if you don't take care of you, your body's going to let you know, like, and it let me know, like it put me on my back for, a couple months. And it was like, I couldn't see, I couldn't do anything. And I thought I can't live like this. And so now it's more just recognizing that I need to like slow things down. It's not so much people taking from me, it's me giving too much, because people will take as much as you'll give them. And so I just had to like really reinforce those boundaries. I also wrote about this in Midlife Crisis a year or two ago. I went to see an energy healer. I thought it would be a fun thing to write about. Woman blew my mind because she was like, I've never seen a person with so many people plugged into her. She's like, you have like 1 million people plugged into you. Does that make sense? And she didn't know who I was. She didn't know anything about me. I have 1 million fans on social media. And I was like, I mean, a little bit of sense, I guess, and she was like, yeah, you got to like unplug. Like you got to like, she's like, let them plug in sometimes, but then you have to like unplug and like let you recharge. And I was like, right. And I was like, and how do I do that? And she's like, well, that's what you're going to have to figure out. And so it's alone time. It's, actually like taking care of myself and spending time with my kids. We got a dog. I'm a dog mom now. Like, what? And sometimes self-care is just sitting with your dog and talking to him. I got last year for my birthday, I asked for rocking chairs so we could sit on the front porch and watch the rain together. Like, that is my self-care. So it doesn't have to be a spa day. Although if someone wants to send me to a spa, I am not going to turn that down either. So, don't get me wrong. I love a good spa day, but we can't all afford that every day. So you have to, and I think it's something every day. I love Dia saying small bites. Every day it's small bites that you have to just kind of think about and just check in with yourself all day long. And how do I feel about this? I love the whole Marie Kondo thing where it's like, if it doesn't bring me joy, but then, I write people I want to punch in the throat. Not much brings me joy. So I can't really do that. But I think, something like my indicator is, am I willing to put pants on and a bra on for this? Like, is it worth a bra? Then I will go. Otherwise, I'm super good. I got to wash my cat.
I love that. We are getting wisdom for life, not just for writing. And I'm loving this conversation, ladies. Thank you again so much for sharing your time with us today. But we have so much more to come. So those of you that are watching live, even if you're watching on the replay, drop your questions in the comments, just like Lene has done here, so that we can ask them. This is a 2-part question. And Lene, I swear you read all of my notes because you did this on Monday as well. You're asking the same questions that we're ready to ask. So let's just jump on in and ask these questions, ladies. What did you all do to get your books in front of people? Jen, you touched on this a little bit as you were talking about your blog and tying blog topics to the books that you've written. But tell us a little bit more about what your journey has looked like in terms of marketing.
My thing is, it used to be back in the old days, in the glory days when social media worked and you didn't have throttles and algorithms and all that kind of stuff. I just had to put it on social media and that was all I had to do. And over the years, that has changed dramatically. Part of getting books in front of people is just that you are always closing. You're always, for the longest time, I would put books in the back end of my car because you'd see people and they'd say like, "Oh, I've been meaning to get your book." I'm like, I got them in the car. Come on outside. I got you. So you just, but I think it's a matter of, there's got to be multiple streams, multiple ways. My books are wide across all the platforms. I don't have audiobooks yet for everything because audiobooks are kind of expensive to produce and I don't sell enough audiobooks to make it worth it just yet, but audiobooks are growing and depending on what your genre is, it might be worth it. So the other thing to do is I think you should always be following the trends, both broadly in publishing, in traditional and self, as well as within your genre. If you've heard me speak before about marketing books and publishing books, you will know that I speak so much about the mostly women who publish romance books, romance and erotica. Find a bunch of those women and follow them because they have their fingers on the pulse. Like, it's not the same genre, obviously, but they know how to move books. Like, they are the one, if you go on TikTok, like I'm on TikTok now. I joined TikTok a year ago because, that's the new platform and you got to be there. But it's
Book Talk is a thing. Book Talk is a thing.
Oh, yeah. Book Talk is a huge thing. And especially for that genre, for that romance genre, and even some self-help, but I feel like it's more like real self-help. Like I like to say, like Deepak Chopra and stuff. Like, I don't really fall into that category. But I think that there's so much to learn from how they are doing it and how they're marketing their books. But I think it's a matter of being wide. A newsletter, I did not start early enough with a newsletter, and I really relied too heavily on social media. I put all my eggs in social media's baskets, and that was a mistake. So if you are a new author, my advice is always to start a newsletter, even if it's only 20 people, and then always be growing it and figuring out a way to grow that newsletter because it's the one list you can control. Yes, you pay to have a newsletter once you reach a certain limit, certain number of subscribers, but you can run A/B testing. You can see what works to open, all that kind of stuff. And so you really have a lot more control over that than you do over social media.
Ooh, good advice. Dia, what's worked for you so far?
So I'm old school. I just call my friends. All the people, I've been here like 7 years, right? So all the nonprofit events I do, all the fundraisers I do, I mean, all the work in the community I do. So people have invited me out for years to come speak at conferences and events, and happy to do those things. And I just remember, like, and I'm horrible, y'all. Like, I did all of this by the hair of my chinny chin chin. So I didn't really even have a lot of lead up time. So I just remember calling people and I was like, hey, yeah, so I wrote this book. They were like, when's it coming out? Next month. Because I'm a news chick. We do everything last minute. Like, we do everything to the second, right? Don't do that. So that was a big one for me. I just started calling folks in my circle, and I've been able to be somewhat successful that way. My overwhelming way is speaking, right? A lot of people who had no idea that I wrote a book. I just did a conference back in the spring, and I can't tell you how many folks. I think I probably sold 100, 150 books that day, just because these people had no idea that I had written a book. And so it was a professional development leadership conference, and I just remember talking to them about relationship building, because a lot of that is relevant to what I talk about in my book, right? We talk about relationships, the people, the places, and the events. And so I have a very strong perspective on those things, right? On network building, relationship building, what those things look like. And so I say that to say, I just leaned on my friends and the people in my circle. That was the biggest way that I started kind of selling books, and was pretty quickly able to get them in some local stores and that sort of thing. And so that was my strategy. Terrible strategy, but I mean, I'm sure Jen and Mia will tell you there are countless platforms and services and all that. And it can really become very, very expensive. You don't have to do that, right? So that would be my thought process. I recorded my audio myself.
Network, your network is your net worth, right?
That's it. Absolutely. Mia, how about you? And then, just because Hurston did this, but I have been thinking this already, is that, like, I'm going to put her in your seat, and she is our publishing guru. So why not utilize that to actually help? Because Mia's a new author. I'm a new author. It looks like Lene, maybe in our audience, is either wanting to be an author or already an author or something. So we got to get you in the conversation, Cynthia, as well. So Mia, how did you get your people out? Did you also, use your network, because it is vast? Or did you actually have a real, and I shouldn't say a real, but did you have a well thought out marketing strategy? And then we're going to ask Cynthia the same thing.
I did not. So I was on the corner of 31st and Truce with Booksmoke. I'm playing. No, I actually, because my background is in public relations and communications, I did think about what the best, vehicle would be. Now, I will say this, Cynthia's, and I'm definitely going to segue to her, because her videos, her TikTok videos or book talk videos are hilarious. That girl she did a throwback of Electric Company, or I think it was Electric Company. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was like, okay. It was like 12 books. And I was like, really? So, I'm gleaning from everybody. I'm gleaning from Jen. I'm gleaning all of you. And so, I always look at Cynthia, and she and I, and Catina, you were there. We were all at the Women of Color conference at UMKC. And, I had a simple setup because I was there representing, I'm the new executive director of the Kansas City Boys Choir and the Kansas City Girls Choir. And so I had this, table with their stuff. I had my book table, and then I also had my t-shirt business table. And so I was trying to make sure that everybody got a little bit of something. And so I'm with Dia in the fact that when people ask me now, hey, can you come in MC, or would you sing, or would you do whatever? Now the negotiation table is, yes, this is the honorarium. Also, I would like a table for my product. And so I'm gonna tell you one other thing that I did, though, as a new author, is I created my own book tour. I've always been very forward. I don't like to wait for somebody to give an invitation when I know that there's something burning in me, something God has given me to do, and sometimes we're waiting on somebody to make the connection, but God has already given us the assignment. And so for me, I said, what cities do I have family and friends in? And I said, yep. So I was like, hey, I'm coming to your city. Let's talk about what that looks like. Let me set up a little, book tour. We'll do a meet and greet, and I'll read, some from my book, and, maybe sing a little bit, do a little bit of entertainment. Let's keep it simple and small. And so for me, that was the marketing tool. Now, I do have a graphic design background. And so working the graphics, every time I would put up something, I just recently posted a page from my book, and with the hashtags or what have you. And so I got an influx of people saying, hey, so you wrote this book? And I was like, come on, social media, where y'all at? What happened? What I did a whole book launch. Where were you? And so the algorithms are different because people will see things 2 weeks later after an event. So I definitely follow Cynthia. I like to look at how she moves, because the girl is a guru. And so I'm so glad that her husband, just jumped on in there and said, hey, I'm promoting my wife. You know what you got to do later, right? All right. So yeah, Cynthia, come on in. Yeah, you can cheese and kiki all day long, but person's like, hey, she ain't lying. You know what you got to do. You can punch him in the throat later.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks. People I want to punch in the throat, right? We're adding to that list. No, I'm kidding. My goodness. Yeah. So thinking about marketing, one of the things that I always tell the authors that we work with that come to us either for self-publishing help or those that publish as Launch Crate authors, we do minimum 6-month window where we create a publishing blueprint, and we will just backwards map. This is the date that we're releasing it. This is the date that we need to make sure that those who are on the launch team get the book and have the information and have all the details so that we can they don't have to do anything. We've got graphics for them. We have copy for them to share on social media or share with their network, even if it's not on social media, just so that we continue to spread the word, right? The more ripples you can create, the better. Mia, I love that you talked about creating your own tour. That's one of the things that COVID made a lot easier, right? Because everybody switched to virtual. Now you can tap into virtual networks in cities all around the country a lot easier, a lot more financially fit for your pockets than getting on a plane and flying and shipping a bunch of books to that location, right? With COVID, now we have new networks in different cities all across the United States that we can now also tap into as we start to release book after book after book, or as my husband mentioned, audiobook after audiobook that we're releasing as well. Lauren, I tried to stay out of the panel discussion. She tried so hard to get me to be a panelist. I just wanted to be a moderator because I love learning from all of the guests as well. I know, too bad.
I know you should have known that you were not going to be in this space with me
I
and
tried.
just sit by the sidelines. Like, no.
And she called you a sucker.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say,
people I want to punch in the throat.
Thank you for sharing that. So like when it's well thought out and planned, right? 6 months backward design, we know when we're going to launch it, we're going to work backward from there. But some people may be like me. I accidentally told people that I published the book. I was like, I did this thing, but I was nowhere near ready to like sell books. And I still am not ready to sell books. I was just doing it because it was an accomplishment. And I had been thinking about it for many years. I had shared it with Cynthia and other people in my circle. Like, I have this idea. I think I should do this thing. And so I was just happy I did it. And I didn't realize that people were like, okay, where can I buy it? Oh my God, I want to do this. And I was like, oh. And so then I was telling people like, oh yeah, no, I'm not ready yet. I just did the thing. So thank you for all of you have a very interesting stories as to, and I wrote it down. Use the network you've already created. Use social media, but understand that's just a part of the process. Design your own book tour. Plan well, right? Do a newsletter. Utilize your speaking engagements as marketing tools. So all of those things, depending on what you're writing and how you're approaching the marketplace, may be things that work for you. And I don't know
Absolutely.
that there's any prescribed way to do it for every single person. It is not. I tell people all the time, a cookie cutter approach is not going to work. So understand and
Absolutely.
know your market, your genre, who you're attempting to market to, and then design for them.
And know who you are as a person as well, right? Because I create silly videos all the time because I literally will walk around the house doing silly stuff nonstop. So just put the camera up and start recording, and that's how you end up with videos like I share on Instagram and on Facebook. And people will relate to you and your authentic self. I couldn't sell books the same way as like some of the bigger romance novelists, right? Because they sell in a way that's authentic to them. And me, being the silly person that I am, I have to find a way to incorporate that humor into the way that it's not necessarily that I'm selling the book, but I'm selling the experience associated with the book itself.
And I don't even know, like when I think about you and I look at you, like I am a fangirl, like I'm like, she knows I'm always commenting. I'm in her competition things. I have all her books, I think, almost now. And so, but for me, I connect with you as the person, and that is what drives me to support your work. Right. And I think that's the thing, like the fact that, like, I think Lene said, oh my God, Jen, I've been laughing with you. This is my therapy for the day. I'm going to sign up for your blog and buy your books. Right. Dia, I don't know that we know each other really well. You and I haven't been part of my network, but you are now, because you're talking about, like, I'm telling this story because I had did the work of healing. And I remember a friend telling me, absolutely. She was like, if you tell your own story, no one can ever weaponize it against you. And that's what you did, is you took ownership of your story and you told it after you had did the healing. And it's like, what's up, world? I'm here. I resonate with you as an individual. Therefore, it makes me want to support you. And then Mia, like, we don't even have to talk about it. Anything she do, I'm going to support it. So that's just it. I fell in love with it a long time ago. That's just my girl. So we got it. But I want to go back to this particular question because I saw it rise up. I think Lauren may have asked it. She said, and that's because Jen mentioned all of us have imposter syndrome. But in some way we overcome it. I don't know that it's true that all of us have imposter syndrome. Maybe it is. So my first question is yes or no. Do you suffer from imposter syndrome? And then 2, how have you overcome it? And again, I'm throwing Cynthia back in there because I want her to answer too. Because she does such remarkable videos and things like that. So whoever wants to jump in first.
I'm going first so that I can go back on mute.
Okay.
Yes, I used to do an entire presentation on imposter syndrome from the lens of being ready for college. And I shared some of the stories of the students that I work with where I could see it in them. And then I also shared my story and some tips on how to overcome it as well. So for me, it's all about hearing that voice and acknowledging that voice and then shutting that voice down as quickly as I can, right? I understand that this is my thought in the minute that I'm having it, but I also am aware of all of the other things that I have done that don't necessarily agree with that thought right in that moment. So understanding it, acknowledging it, appreciating it for what it is, thanking it, and then putting it to bed. That's usually what I do.
I'll jump in. My answer is not necessarily PC. I remember in the very beginning, Jen mentioned the one bad comment, right? I work in TV. They complain about my hair, my makeup, my weight, you pregnant, you get it all, right? Very quickly, I was like, I don't care. And so I generally, what I do if I get like a hateful comment from somebody, or first thing I do is I click on their profile pic. That normally works. Okay. That normally does a dab of do you. You know what I'm saying? I'm normally good after that. But on the imposter syndrome piece, I always go back to, and again, this is not a PC answer, but it's an authentic one. So I'm going to tell you. I'm looking at people who don't know what they're talking about all day, every day, pretending to be experts. Right. And this is a very tragic example, but I remember, we look at some of the social media influencers who have painted this rosy and beautiful life. That ain't the reality. And so I think sometimes what you think you see somebody doing, they not doing. And so I just try to be present. I think that's a huge part of what we've lost as social media has grown. For all of its benefits, I think there's a heck of a lot of evils in there, but that's one of them. So I think for me, anytime I question my perspective, I'm like, Jen, I do a lot of self-checks, right? Check my motives, check my backing, my research, what validates this viewpoint. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, it's a whole lot of jackwagons out here who are more than happy to run their mouth. For example, Steve Harvey, you've been married, divorced 3-4 times. Why are we listening to you about anything relationship related? You see what I mean? So like, I think for me, when it comes to, I know what I know. And as a journalist, I know what it takes for me to feel competent, informed, and at a place where I feel like I have something valuable to contribute. But click on the profile pic.
I love that. Okay, Jen, go ahead.
Oh gosh, Dia, you and I could spend all day just looking at people who live in their mom's basements and leaving comments with Cheeto covered fingers, right? I mean, the keyboard warriors and the confidence they have, I kind of get, I think about them a lot when I'm thinking about imposter syndrome. Oh, just what do you know? Like, what do you have to say? I'm like, well, I know how to spell there, and there. I know the difference between that. So how's that? So take a seat. And my answer is also a little bit like Dia's too, and that it's not that, it's probably not that PC, but I always try to punch up. So here we go. I try to think of mediocre white men. What would they do? Like, I mean, they lack no confidence, none. You know, even like my son is 17 years old and he thinks if he watches a YouTube video, he could do heart surgery, you know, and I'm just sort of like, cool. I'm going to actually go write something. It's like, I feel fine now. But I think that, I don't think the men struggle with this. And I remember reading a few years ago about like the jobs that women will apply for versus the jobs that men will apply for, you know? And I think about that a lot. So I always kind of bring it back to that like I'm like, this is the baseline, you know? And so I'm like, man, surely I'm better than that. You know? So yeah, I don't know. And I do think I'm with Dia too, in that after years and years and years of getting negative comments, you know, you sort of develop a very thick skin. I mentioned at the beginning that I used to be anonymous. And when they first made me like put my picture out there, I was like, oh God, like here come the comments. Like, you know, no one's going to like my hair or the way I dress but I just have to like ignore those people and move on and focus on who you are speaking to. That is what you're doing. And those people don't consider you an imposter.
I hate to double dip, but Jen brought up a very valuable point. On that research, they said that men will apply for a job and say, I can figure it out as I go.
Yes.
Women believe we have to check all the boxes first.
Yep.
Right. And they have done exactly. Okay. Lauren's already on it. So they've done research on this. Men, all men, generally speaking, will look at a job description and say, oh, I can figure that out, or I can learn along the way, or I know enough to get by. Women feel like we have to check everything that is on that job description before we should even put ourselves out there. So
all right, Mia, it's in your hands. Imposter syndrome, yes or no? How do you handle it?
I think I definitely agree with Dia, and I'm gonna call Jen Gia, so that way we can all just be synonymous. Gia, Jen, Dia, and Mia. I think I'm definitely like that. I can be very petty. I let a lot of stuff roll off though, but in my head I ruminate, and so I'll be like, should I? And so just in recent last year or two, I'm emotional, and so something will happen. I'll be like, oh, this what we doing? This what we doing? Bet. And so I'm ready to go, and then I have to take a step back and say, you know what? Why are you so bothered? Why are you so bothered? So are you fat? So why you mad? Why you mad because they called you fat? All right, listen, are you a little silly? Why you mad because they call you silly? You know, whatever that is, whatever that situation is. And so once I realized, you know, you wasn't lying, I just didn't want to hear it. And then I have to figure out, how important are you right now in my life? When I look at everything that's going on, yeah, dear. When I look at everything that's going on around, be like, do I engage in this superficial conversation with you and waste time that I could be doing, anything? Or do I engage and then, get my blood pressure up? Yeah, I don't really think so. And I really don't care. Had a situation just recently happen and I had to check myself then and say, why you mad, Mia? Mia, why you mad? Why you mad? Girl, let that go. And then I start looking at everything else that's in front of me and say, you know what? Girl, stop tripping. Keep it moving. So, I think we can all have those moments of imposter syndrome, but I don't think when you know who you are, like Cynthia says, when you know who you are, you check back in. And it's like, yep, I was tripping for a minute, but it is what it is. God bless you. Have a great day. And I hope you pee on yourself in the bed.
Y'all are my favorite people now because I am not PC either. And so I'm always loving to be with Lauren because we can not be PC together. And now I'm like, I have a whole new circle of people. Yay. So thank you for that. I do want to get to Kristen. Thomas had a question. And she says, how do you assess a publisher's offer if you get one? So many people seem to self-publish. Now, again, I think I'm the newest. Mia and I think we kind of made announcements at around the same time. I think that, the traditional publishing setting has made it very difficult for especially people of color, perhaps women as well, to publish over the years. And like, there's this really detailed process. You get an agent and you have to do this and you have to do all these steps. Very old, much like the world of education, right? Failure to evolve and keep up with the time. And so the moment that a company like Amazon started allowing people, I think, to self-publish in a non-intimidating, non-threatening, kind of easy way, then that allowed the diversity of literature of all types of genres and people and things to and social media helped that as well come about. Then that's where we started seeing tons of self-publishing. Cynthia was brave enough to start her own publishing company. And so have any of you received a publishing deal? How did you assess that? And then would you advise people to go that route or do self-publishing?
I think this is a good question for Jen.
Yeah, so I'm on my third book with Penguin Random House. I'm published with Ballantine, which is an imprint of Penguin. And, and how do I assess it? So the first time, my very first book, I self-published, and that one did really well on Amazon. But my ego really wanted a contract. I wanted a contract, and I wanted to see my book in Barnes and Noble, because now, depending on who you are, like, the rules are changing all the time. But back in those days, you couldn't have a self-published book in Barnes and Noble or in an independent bookstore or anything like that. And I wanted to see my book on a shelf. And so, so when the offer came in, it was actually, looking back now, it was a good offer. But at the time, I sort of thought, I think I don't know. I think maybe I'm worth more. But I didn't really understand what an offer looked like. So if you follow Publishers Weekly and Publishers Marketplace, they will publish in there when people get deals, and they use really weird language, like a very good deal or an excellent deal, and so they just don't know. They won't give you actual numbers, but there is like a little chart, and I usually have it here I have it right here on my blotter. So like a nice deal is $1,000 to $49,000. Then that's the advance that you get. And like, we could have a whole hour about just advances, because you get this advance and then you have to earn it back with their weird math. They charge a person $18 for my book, but really about $1 is what comes back towards my advance. And so you have to think about, I'm not going to make any more money until I earn back this advance. And then I'm still only going to make a small percentage off of the list price. And so it's totally convoluted math. It's, ebook is worth more or different than paperback versus like a hardcover versus, audiobooks. You have all these different things, right? And so for me, it's kind of a gut instinct. I know at that point I'd come out of self-publishing. I knew how many books I'd sold. I knew how much money Amazon paid me and Barnes & Noble paid me and Apple paid me. And, I knew how much I'd made. And so I had to look at it and think, my thing is always, can I do better with the big publisher? And what are they going to do to help me market this book? And so some of my people I want to punch and throw books have been, I've given that, I've sold it to them. And some of them I've kept it, I'll be honest, because one of the things you have is you have a deal, you have a line item in your contract that says they get first look at your next book. And so I'd sold 2. They actually ended up buying my self-published book, which was kind of a rarity, but they bought that book and we fixed that one up. And they gave me less for that book because that book I'd already sold like 20,000 copies or something like that of it. And so they were like, well, no one's going to buy it again, really, which now looking back, that's not true, but okay, whatever. And then they gave me more for like a new book, a new concept. And then when I gave them my idea for my 3rd book, which was called Working with People I Want to Punch and Throat, my editor was very frank with me. And she was like, you didn't, I don't think we'll offer you, we're definitely not going to offer you what we've already offered you. And I don't think you're going to accept our offer. And at that point I knew what I could do. And so I thought, you're right. I'm not going to accept your offer. I'm going to keep this one and I'm going to keep it in-house and I'm going to do it myself. And that book has already earned out more than their offer was. So it's like a gut thing too. Like you have to kind of think like, how can I do this? And I will say to you, so self-publishing and traditionally publishing, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. You are the one selling that book. You are ultimately the one. They can put you. I had really good placement in bookstores, and that did well. But I've also had really bad placement in bookstores, and that makes an impact too. And so you have to think about that. But that's really, I don't have billboards. I don't have I remember calling up my publisher and somebody else had a bus with her book on it. And I was like, where's my bus? And they're just like, yeah, you don't get a bus. Like, you're not a bus girl. So, but it's like, you have to, it's like, there's like, I don't know, probably 20 authors that really keep all the lights on. And those are the guys that get the buses, and the rest of us, they're like, we can give you some postcards. And so I got postcards to mail out. So to me, it's always a gut instinct and kind of thinking about, but always know that no matter what, you are the person who's going to have to market that book and keep that in mind too. And even this last time with my next book with Midlife Bites, I had new agents this time. And, I said, well, I want a bigger marketing budget. Like I want them to commit. And he was like, honestly, he's like, just get a bigger advance and spend the money yourself. And so that's what I did. So I don't, how to assess it though is kind of what is your time worth and what do you think the book is worth and what do you think you could do on your own? Sorry, boom. Long answer.
That's a great answer though. Great answer. That was a very full answer. I want to make sure that we're mindful of everyone's time. And Lene asked a 2-part question. Let me see if I can find that because our closing question is actually in that 2-part question. So we're going to go to Dia first.
Sure.
What advice would you give to new authors or people who are starting their writing journey?
This is going to have to be my last one, y'all. I'm sorry. I got to jump off here in a second. But, my biggest advice is start writing now. Last week, last month, last year. And the reason why, when it came time to write my book, my husband tells people, she wrote the book in like 2 weeks. Lies. These were collections of things that I had been journaling about and processing through and writing about for years. So start writing now. If you have the idea, start putting it down. What would you want your marketing and those things to look like? And you never know where you may land. So, my biggest advice is to start, even if nobody sees it, but you. Go ahead and start. You can make it perfect later.
Great advice. Mia, what would you say?
Actually, can I jump in real quick? I know since you have to jump off, Dia, can you give people contact information, where to find your book, restate the title of your book, all the good stuff? Then you can hop off if you want to.
So my book is called The Unhappiest One. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. I did the widespread thing. Audible, if you want to hear my voice for an hour and 47 minutes, because I did my own audiobook, because I figure I work in TV, so why not use my own voice? And you can also get it at Made in KC stores all throughout the metro. So if you want to pop in there and grab it, I personally like the Black Pantry on 31st Street. It ain't Truth, but it's on 31st. So swing by there, grab a coffee and support. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. We absolutely, like I said, you're my new friend, so don't be trying to ghost me, okay? We really appreciate your gem, your wisdom, all of that good stuff. I'm sure that people reach out to you. They'll be purchasing the book and all of that. So we may need to continue this conversation another time. I hope you stay open to it.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Mia, all right, jump on in there. What's your advice to a new author?
Just do it. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Don't let anybody else make you second guess what you know you can do, what you're able to do. What's in you is worthy of someone's time. I remember somebody saying to me, "People have been waiting on you." And so you never know who's waiting on you. You never know who's waiting on you. And my publicist, she's watching Nikita Spearman. She's in Texas, and she tells me all the time, "You are the best gift that God has given to to this world." And so share it, and all of us need to feel like that. He created us for purpose. And so new authors, just do it, because you won't be new long. You'll be an author, not a new author. So just do it. Get out there and do it.
And hold that book up again, Mia. Tell the people the name of the book and where they might be able to find it.
It is Out of the Hard Place, 50 Things I've Learned in 50 Years. Like I said, I wrote it like a
I love that.
magazine. It's very interactive. Right now, it's on my website at miaramsey.com, or you can purchase it on Amazon. And if you just Google or search Mia Ramsey, it pops up. Like, I guess because I spend a lot of money with Amazon.
All right, Jen, last but certainly not least.
Wait. No, she's not Jen anymore. Remember?
I'm Gia.
Right. Gia. That's
I'm
right.
Gia. Come on now. I got a nickname. I've never had a nickname. This is so exciting. I'm getting new business cards, everything. Like, no, I'm Gia. It's Mia, Dia, and Gia. We're going on the road. Yeah, well, I agree with everything they all said about start. The other thing I would add to it is read more. I think that authors should always be reading. Read in your genre, read outside your genre, read. And then the thing, other shameless promotion, but I do have a book called How I Effing Did It, which tells you like every secret and all the things like that I couldn't gather today. So, and this one is on sale right now. If you go to my website, which is Jen Mann Writes, Jen with one N, Mann with two, which I didn't know was that difficult, but apparently it is. And it's writes like a writer instead of I'm right, but I should buy that one too. It's on sale right now. So I put it on sale today for y'all, but and I'll mail it to you and I'll tell you all my secrets. But I think that we need to read more and just start writing and call yourself a writer. I don't like meeting people and I'm like, what do you do? And I'm like, I write. No, I'm a writer. I wrote something. Would you like to read it? So that's my advice.
Very powerful.
Cynthia,
Thank
you don't get to escape the question.
Oh, what do you mean I don't get to escape the question?
No, you do not. Absolutely not. So what is your advice to aspiring or new authors?
Honestly, they touched on it with all of their answers. And it's the truth, right? Just start with something. Start writing 5 minutes a day, and then increase that to 10 minutes a day. And then if you can, increase that to 20 minutes a day. Just write something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be related to your book. Just get in the habit of writing, because then when the ideas for your book start getting funneled through you, it's going to be that much easier to write the book as it comes to you.
Thank you. And I did hear a little birdie say something about a master class. So tell me more.
Yeah, there is a master course for manuscript writing called Idea to Editor. That's one of the things that I offer through Launch Crate Publishing. And I think our next course is coming up in August. So there's only 2 more courses available this year. You can find more details on launchcrate.com. You can find more information about me on my personal website, clfails.com. CLfails as in fails a test.com. And I'm going to leave it at that. I think, though, we might have coming up in July a Girl's Guide to Business that is geared towards writing, if I remember correctly. And I think I'm leading that. So those of you that are checking this out live or on the replay, come back, because I want to continue the conversation so that we can get you started on your writing journey.
And there was another person in our audience that offered a guide or some tools as well. So we want to acknowledge that person. It was early on in the conversation. Also, I'm looking at our time. We are about 2 minutes behind. Anytime I moderate something, we're going to be late. I'm just going to tell you. But I do want to be mindful. One, from a Catina perspective, you all have just been phenomenal today. So thank you so much, Mia, Jen, or Gia now, and Dia. Cynthia, thank you so much for allowing me to assist, be by your side, learn from you, sit at your feet, however we say it. And Lauren, and Innovate Her as a team. We thank you so much for providing the platform and the opportunity for us to come together and have these girls' guides to business lunch discussions so that we can grow both personally and professionally. That being said, is there any other nugget or last word that you all want to give the audience? Lauren, do you want to join us and tell more about Innovate Her, where they can find information about Innovate Her or become part of the community? We'd love to have you join us back on.
Wait, I'm back. Yeah, no, this has been an absolutely amazing experience. I've been laughing, and like there were a couple of times where, you know, some really vulnerable truth bombs were dropped where I, you know, just I felt a reverberation in my soul, and I want to thank all of you for adding to the experience, and I'm going to express our thanks to Dia as well. But just hearing your stories and getting to learn a little bit more about you and the work that all of you do to share stories and get vulnerable and make us laugh and make us cry and make us think. It's just it's an honor, and I'm just so glad that you were here with us today. And for the folks listening at home, thank you for sharing your questions and sharing your impressions. I hope you got as much out of this as I personally did. I'm sure that you did, because so much amazing knowledge was shared, and I'm very grateful. On behalf of InnovateHER KC, I just want to thank you for spending this time with us today. We will have this discussion up on our socials. I would ask you to like and to share so that we can get the word about these amazing authors and amazing experts out there. So definitely do that. Coming up with Innovate Her, we have a couple of things. I'm sure most of you might be aware, but we have our monthly meetups. They are the first Tuesday of every month. So we have one coming in July, but then in August, we have partnered with KC Auction Company. And well, they have an all-female auction with which we're very excited about, and they've offered to give us a really cool sneak peek. So we hope you can join us for that. And I want to say that's August 2nd, but don't quote me on that. Hold on, I'm just gonna check real quick because I'm terrible with dates. Yes, August 2nd at KC Auction Company, and we'll be putting more information out about that. So if you have any questions, if you have not already joined InnovateHER KC, we would love to have you. But again, thank you so much, friends, for letting us shine a light on your work and your talent and your expertise. This has been a wonderful time together. I've just loved it. Anybody else? Does anybody have anything else that they want to close out with? All right, friends, we will catch you on the flip side.
Bye. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.